It's not how you get into the building, it's how you feel doing it. As a person living with disabilities, do you feel like an equal part of your community? Are you valued, or are you thought of as an afterthought? Hi, my name is Madison. I am a second-year student here at UFV after taking about a year and a half off after getting in a pretty serious car accident and developing a neurological disorder. And now I am navigating being a student at UFV with a disability. And this is my really good friend and cousin, Chloe.
Hello, my name is Chloe. I am also a current student here at UFV. I am in my fourth year, just about to graduate with a degree in sociology, and I am able-bodied, and Madison and I were here together today as we're planning to begin a project in the new year, really exploring the experiences of students with disabilities at UFV, both in terms of their academic and social spheres of their student experience. We really hope that through this project, the voices of students with disabilities will be amplified and it will lead to change at the institution in terms of accessibility and inclusion.
I think what we want to focus on first is talking about accessibility and what that means to us as a disabled person and as an able-bodied person. And I think a lot of the times our world just isn't an accessible world, and it wasn't built for those with disabilities in mind. It really does feel like a constant battle. When places are accessible, I often get so excited, and it's quite sad because I'm getting excited over things that are like a basic human right. An example of that is going into the washroom and be like, oh my gosh, like my wheelchair can fit through the stall here, and there's bars, and I can get on the toilet by myself. And I think a lot of the times when we think about accessibility, we think of, oh, okay, well, there's a ramp. Like, why are you complaining, Madison? There's a ramp. And I think accessibility goes way beyond that. It's not how you get into the building, it's how you feel doing it. As a person living with disabilities, do you feel like an equal part of your community? Are you valued, or are you thought of as an afterthought? I think for me, in summary, what accessibility means to me is being included and heard and celebrated. I recently started playing sledge hockey, which has been such an amazing experience for me. I'm trying to get Chloe out because I think you would really like it. And for those of you who don't know what sledge hockey is, it is adapted hockey for those with disabilities. And the first session that I went to, I cried on the way home because I felt so seen and welcomed and valued. And I think a lot of people don't experience that with disabilities. And I think that shouldn't just be a place when you're surrounded with others with disabilities. It should be a place that you should feel that just going into your community. And that's why I'm really excited that Chloe and I have the opportunity to talk today and as well work on this project together and share those experiences of students with disabilities at UFV.
Yeah, reflecting on that question, what does accessibility means and what does it look like? As an able-bodied person, that's not necessarily something I have to think about every day. So I was kind of struck, how do I relate to that question? For me, it really started with recognizing that our world has been built and structured in a way for people with particular experiences and abilities. And with that, we really need to acknowledge that disabilities aren't the problem, but it's the society that the disability is situated within. And at more of a structural or systemic level, I often get upset thinking about the ways that our society's really providing a disservice to, in a lot of cases, to people with disabilities through its inability to create truly accessible spaces. Through talks like this with Madison or the project that we're hoping to start in the fall, it also gets me excited about the opportunities that there are and that exist for change to occur and people with disabilities for their voices to be heard and contribute to the construction of new spaces and new communities. I think as well at a lot more of an individual level, I think this conversation makes me think about our responsibility as people and as humans that are able-bodied to recognize that in our journey of allyship and relationships and supporting one another, that we might do things that aren't helpful or sometimes even unintentionally harmful to somebody living with a disability. But in that sense, the value of truly listening and being receptive to change and constructive feedback about the ways one interacts with the world and people around them is really important and is highlighted.
Mm-hmm. I think what you're saying there at the beginning, like our world isn't an accessible world and wasn't built for those with disabilities in mind. I feel like the word disability wasn't talked about for so long, and there was so much stigma around disability and those who are living with disabilities. For me, I spent most of my life as an able-bodied person, so I feel like I have so much compassion now for those living with disabilities, because I've been in a place where maybe I was trying to help someone and they didn't need the help, and I wasn't listening to them saying, oh, I don't need help. I was like, oh, but you know, I can just push you, like it's fine. And I think sometimes people want to make spaces inclusive and accessible, but they just don't really fully think through what that looks like, or they don't allow the person to share what that looks like, or they don't listen thoroughly enough. I find myself in experiences where spaces are said to be accessible and then in reality they aren't. As an able-bodied person, I think there's things you don't think about because you haven't had that experience. I feel like this can be related to others in marginalized communities who have lived, you know, similar experiences, and people just can't truly relate because they haven't been there themselves. And I think in that space, it's just important to come alongside and have those open conversations and be open to learning and growing with somebody, I think is really important.
I agree. I think as a able-bodied person, oftentimes you might have the best of intentions, whether that be in an individual relational aspect of your life or even more at a designing level of a community or a physical space or even an academic curriculum, whatever aspect of social life that it might be. It really highlights the value of collaborative work as the only way to really allow the greatest number of voices and experience be expressed and heard. And I think that when that type of work is done well, we'll see it reflected in the ways that we build and experience our communities around us.
And I think too, like for universities or institutions, for a change that needs to occur in our society, in our communities, to make spaces more welcoming and accessible for all types of people, go beyond surface level things, just like a ramp and things like that. It means creating relationships and building bonds with people and being willing to have compassion and be like, hey, like I want to help you do this. Like, can we work alongside each other to have this goal or to work together? And like Chloe was saying, when those voices are included, maybe we'll have less ramps that don't work.
Yeah.
Or less spaces and experiences where people feel like an afterthought.
Yeah, it's good to be able to hear those conversations that both reflect on the history and what has taken us to where we are now, but also to recognize that we can't stop here and that these spaces, as much as they may have been better than what they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they are not inclusive and they're not accessible. That's, as Madison was saying earlier, a buzzword that keeps that we hear these days. But as people with disabilities, as allies, whatever your space is in this conversation, I think there's a responsibility to say more can be done.